Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Um, it is
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on November 8th, 2023. We have a quorum present. So I will call to order this meeting of the ABC and Public Safety Committee for Advisory Neighborhood Commission 1C. Um, Present are Commissioner Peter Wood, Commissioner Barney Shapiro, and Commissioner Jake Falaskini. Before we move on to the first item on the agenda, we did not actually give a full 7 days notice for the agenda that went out to the neighborhood. And so I would move to officially add to the agenda the specific liquor license renewals that will be up that are on the agenda here, the proposed agenda here. We knew that there would be some, and we did notify the neighborhood that there would be liquor license renewals that were on the agenda, but not the specific ones until after the 7 day notice. And so I would move to add these three to the agenda so that we can hear them in a timely manner before we might need to be involved and protest them if we were to ever get to that point. And so I'm moving that we add liquor license renewals for Argonne Market, Safeway, which is both of those are grocery license, and then a new liquor license request from Team Columbia LLC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. With that, then I will move it to the first item on the agenda, which is the police report. And I believe that we have Lieutenant Jeffrey Jones here. Can we please promote him to a speaker? Lieutenant, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. All is well.
Um,
Uh-oh. What's that?
Mostly, yeah. I wanted to personally, before we get started, just thank your officers for a really timely response this morning, right after I called something in at 2301 Champlain Street. Came with great haste and handled it exceptionally well. And just wanted to thank you. Thank you for that.
Wonderful. That's great news to hear. All right, so in a nutshell, our numbers are looking pretty good. Over the past 30 days, we've only had one ADW. That was an ADW knife that happened at 1721 Columbia. We have great video with this one, so I believe that the detectives will make a closure on this soon. The two individuals knew each other. One guy pulled out a knife and very superficial cut on the left hand of the victim. So hopefully that'll be pending a closure soon. Our robberies were down 14% in the past 30 days, which is great news. We went from 7 to 6. That brings our overall violent crime totals, like we stayed exactly the same. Property crimes, our burglaries are up 17%. I will explain that a little more in greater detail momentarily about why that number has risen. Our theft from autos are down 57%. Overall thefts are down 6%. I'll discuss the decrease in thefts that is sort of intertwined with the burglaries as well. Overall, property crime is down 16%. So overall, PSA 303 crime in the past 30 days is down 14%. So that is good news for the most part all the way around with that. I want to start talking about the robberies. We had 3 robberies that happened on the 22nd that were committed by the same suspects in the same suspect vehicle. They were all armed robberies that occurred on Calorama, Lanier, and a third one on 16th. The vehicle was recovered in the 6th district, so the detectives are working with evidence, cameras, and they are conducting as many follow-ups as they can with that. We've had several closures for robberies as well. There was a closure of a robbery snatch that occurred at 17th and Euclid. That happened on the 30th. And there was another closure of the suspects who robbed the DC Pizza and Kebab back on the 10th. So we caught those guys, and they were held in court. Let's see. Let me move on to the burglaries. A quick update. The department has been working with the Office of the Attorney General, and they've agreed that a lot of these habitual repeat offenders for the retail thefts, if they've committed, I believe the number is 2 or 3, they are going to start charging them with burglary, which is a more serious crime. It's a felony. Hopefully that crime will stick a lot better than just your run-of-the-mill theft. So we've had 3 closures from the CVS, and they were all juveniles, and they were each charged with individual burglary charges. So I do not know their court status, but I will find out, and I can provide an update later. So I think that's great progress with the OAG. There was a closure. There was a residential burglary closure. There was a burglary of a residence on 18th Street. We locked that guy up, and we had another closure of the burglary of Adams Station. What is that? 2421 18th Street. So that sort of, Jake, that sort of goes into what you said about our response time has definitely gotten better, especially with these burglary calls. It's imperative that we get there, we're quiet, we take a tactical approach, and we were able to get these guys in the act, which is absolutely great. We did have a burglary of Enchanted Nails, 2324 18th. They broke in and they took the ATM machine. As historically speaking, we've been hit hard on 18th Street, and we've had 2 in the 1700 block of Columbia Road. But hopefully, the way the numbers are looking, this decrease continues. The department in the city has rolled out the air tag. They're handing out air tags to civilians to place in their vehicles. I would recommend, if you have a scooter, put them in your hatch, maybe even put them in your purse. That has not made it to 3D yet. They are rolling out the pilot program in 5 and 6D. So as soon as I get more information on that, I will absolutely share it with everyone. And that is all on my agenda for now. I can open it up to any questions.
Commissioner Wood.
Hi, thanks. So I have a couple questions. One I've asked before, but I'm just curious because it sounds like you've been busy and some things have gotten moving. Any kind of progress on trying to, I guess, gather motive, trying to assess any pattern of what has contributed to why there's so much, especially the kind of like property theft that we've seen, not just in Adams Morgan, but especially the commercial corridors. Has anyone talked, I guess, or is that still kind of difficult to assess?
It's very difficult to assess. It seems as though the burglaries of the establishments, most of those, aside from the one ATM, they're going in there and they're stealing computers, iPads, and other electrical devices. I think that is what I could deduct from the commercial ones. And I can't put a definitive relationship between the residential ones. It's just hard to say what's going through the bad guys' minds. I don't know if these locations are targeted, if there's something they see that makes it a crime of opportunity. I'm not sure. I can't really relate to that.
No, that makes sense. And I know that some national research has shown that pretty much like carjackings in specific everywhere have gone up. So there's clearly some bigger picture issue going on here, which is probably related to the pandemic and the aftermath, but it's hard to tell. Second question, maybe you're not the best person to ask for this, and that's okay. The difference in DC, like recent kind of trends of conviction time compared between theft and burglary, do you have any, can that be quantified in any way? Do you have like just anything to kind of get us an understanding of how those two compare in recent history? Do you have any information on that?
Not off the top of my head, but the statutes between thefts and the burglaries have not changed. But historically, it's a lot tougher to catch a burglar, depending on the types of evidence they leave behind and videos. And, in my personal opinion, in my time on the department, I've absolutely seen an increase in these arrests because of the prevalence of cameras. I know I said it last time, like the more cameras we have out there, the more possibilities that we have to actually catch a guy coming or going or during the act. So it's hard to sort of, I guess your question is trying to relate the two, or what?
What's the typical sentence? I mean, compared between the two, I guess the real question is if it deters future behavior, but that's really hard to assess. But just in terms of a typical sentence between those two, is there any kind of ballpark numbers that you know?
I don't. I mean, the burglary carry, that's a felony offense, and for a theft to be a felony, the value has to be over $1,000. But now with this new with the new burglary charge being assigned to these retail thefts, not just one theft. If they do two, three, or four, if that value, well, actually, regardless of the value, they're still charging them with burglary. So I'm hoping we'll see an upswing in convictions, and hopefully we'll keep these guys away for a little bit longer.
Thank you.
Commissioner Shapiro.
There we go. The use of the burglary provision, I think, is an excellent idea. I am curious, is because there used to be, and I'm sure it's still there because we haven't had any criminal code revisions. There is a step up for burglary committed in an occupied building.
Correct.
So if let us just assume that, actually, the nail place, there are apartments above it. Am I correct? I think there are.
Yeah. So the burglary, like the increased staff for an occupied it is for a residence, not a business. It is specifically says in the statute for an occupied residence. So, for example, if you're at home asleep in your house and someone breaks in and they steal your TV, that is classified as a burglary one. It's a burglary one because the home is occupied. If they break into a business after hours, that is a burglary two.
Now, my question is, if there's a mixed-use building that they break into the building, does the burglary one provision ever come? This is probably something for lawyers to discuss, but would you think the burglary one provision would come into play?
I do, depending on their intent and the area for which they burglarize or they try to get into. For example, I know we had an issue with City Bikes. I think that's on 14th Street. The owner of City Bikes lives above. Yeah, they live above the retail spot. But these folks kept breaking in and they were stealing from the retail, not the residence part of it, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I just didn't know whether or not that because the building has residential, whether that could then they could up it from a B2 to a B1.
Yeah, it all depends on the specific circumstances of that burglary.
But I whoever came up with this idea, I think it's an excellent idea.
Let's hope let's hope these numbers.
My only question is, there have been a lot of stats that have traditional charging rates in the city were closer to about 70% of cases that were brought in front of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Over the last few years, that dipped into the 30s. I mean, just a massive shift in how the U.S. Attorney's Office was handling the cases that were being brought to them by MPD. And I have heard just an incredible amount of frustration from folks in MPD about the fact that they are doing so much work that goes unresolved because those charging rates have been so low compared to historical averages. My understanding is that's made a pretty big shift over the last month and a half. And I know that the U.S. Attorney has really kind of touted, that turnaround, but it is still well below the traditional statistical rate. Last I saw in this last year or this last few months, like it jumped back like into the 40 to 50 range, but it's still nowhere close to like the 60 to 70% charging rate of historical averages. I know that this is kind of maybe getting a little bit outside of your expertise, but like, have you noticed a shift, but does it still feel like there's a long way to go? I guess is the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm only going to speak on behalf of Lieutenant Jeff Jones. I'm not going to speak on the department. I can only speak to what I've seen and, like historically how things have gone. I was on a conference call with the, I forget her title. I believe she's the superintendent of the attorneys. The burden of proof for convicting a person, for example, carrying a pistol without a license, has absolutely skyrocketed through the roof. It is almost to the point where the officer needs to know for a fact, not based on walking, characteristics of an armed gunman. They need to be able to articulate that they know for a fact that person's carrying a gun for the U.S. Attorney's Office to convict. And they even said that. And that just completely blew my mind. It's like, I'm a firm believer, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But that has definitely gone by the wayside. And I apologize, it's probably unprofessional to use that metaphor. But they absolutely, in my opinion, they want these slam dunk cases that they could possibly offer a plea to. And I've never agreed with that. Like, officers, like 95% of the time, we're bringing great cases. Can some officers write better than others? Absolutely. Are there some cases that we could present to the U.S. attorneys better? Absolutely. We as a department, we can improve on that. But I just feel the burden of proof has absolutely increased over the years.
Yeah, it does. I like to see kind of this shift, that it feels like that's meaningful. And I think that it makes a big difference in folks feeling like they're being held accountable, and you all feeling like your work is appreciated.
Absolutely.
Because it's got to feel awful to go out there and do all this work, and then only 30% of those cases that you bring are actually brought. That's got to feel really awful. So I'm glad to see that there's this shift that's happened. And I hope to see continued move in that direction. So
absolutely, you and I both.
Thank you, Lieutenant. That's all I have. I'd be happy to open it up for Commissioner Wood, and then we can open it up for any audience questions.
I was just gonna, Brian in the chat asked a question that's relevant to my SMD as well. I don't know if you're familiar. I guess it's been over 2 years now. A worker at a restaurant that no longer exists on Columbia was killed by a reckless driver. Her name is Nina Larson. I'm wondering if you're familiar and if you know of any updates. It's been pretty stagnant for many months. But if there's any change, would love to.
Off the top of my head, do you or anyone in the audience have a reference, like CCN number or what is that name again? I can absolutely look into it.
A number, I don't know. Nina Larson was the victim's name. She, I think it died at the beginning of November, maybe end of October. It was about 2 years ago, almost to the day. And it was on the 1800 block of Columbia Northwest.
Yeah, I can definitely look into that, and I can send either one of you an update, and then you can push it out to everyone.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And then if you can also, just the outstanding homicides that haven't actually had arrests from over the last year, if you wouldn't mind just offline providing an update on those two, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure. I actually looked those up, and there is no updates that I am available to see. I've found that the homicide division, they don't like to release, like if they're working with a specific person of interest, they don't like that information to get out because who knows the realms of communication back to the bad guy. So, but as far as I know, there has not been any forward movement. But if I find anything out, of course I'll pass it out to you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant. Any other audience questions? I see a thank you from Brian in the chat. Okay, I think I gave it the obligatory 3 seconds where it starts to get uncomfortable. So, Lieutenant, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Thanksgiving.
You as well. Take care.
All
right. I will skip the second item on the agenda and move to the third item on the agenda, since we have Cameron here with us. And Cameron is from the Venable law firm and here to represent Team Columbia LLC. So if we can please promote him. And speaking of the establishment that's no longer up on the 1800 block of Columbia, I believe that is what Cameron is here to speak with us about today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Cameron Mixon, counsel to many of the ABC licensed establishments that you probably regularly work with. I just have to, if I may, correct the record. I'm with the Veritas law firm, Venable, very different practice. Things get messy if we mix them up. Here on behalf of the entity is called Team Columbia LLC. They haven't yet worked out a trade name for this new concept, but it's a new American style restaurant, kind of a pub tavern, place to socialize, talk, sit with fresh pints and cocktails. They're applying for hours between 11 a.m. and 2 or 3, depending on the weekday or weekend nights. Obviously, it's a little flexible on when exactly that'll be used, but they want that basic flexibility, maybe consider different types of events, maybe sports or something. And they're also applying for a small summer garden that would seat 9. So the applicants wanted to emphasize that they are have been restaurateurs before. They operate Exiles Bar on U Street. They are very active in the community around there, working with local ANCs, nonprofit organizations, sponsoring local sports teams. They're really big in getting people together for Liverpool games. So there's somebody who's just been involved in the community and have had a recognized establishment before. It did win a RAMI Award, it's Restaurant Association, earlier this year. So it's just another way of expanding their reach to give more people the option to socialize in a fun, vibrant place.
That's great. Thank you. And I guess my only questions are, what are the names of the owners?
Yes, the principal is Brian Hillary, and his partners are Donna Gihuli and Carl Keene.
Cool. Yeah, folks who are known in the neighborhood. And this is in the space actually directly adjacent to the old Mintwood Place restaurant, not in the old, or is this in the old Mintwood Place space?
I know the street layout.
I thought it was Pops. I thought this was the Pops place.
I think so.
So this is two doors down from, yeah, 2 doors down from the old Mintwood Place location.
That's right. Yeah, that was 1813. This is 1817.
Yeah, it used to be Pops.
Yep. Great. I open it up to questions from the other commissioners. Peter, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, this is just obligatory trash. How they plan on handling it?
I haven't had the opportunity to get into that operational detail yet. I assume that they, because of their experience, know to keep it in secure containers that are closed at night with regularly scheduled pickups. And that's something I can loop back around when I get a hold of the operators. They're just out of town right now.
Question. I just know that a lot of the constituents in the buildings, kind of like almost above it, have a lot of issues, but a lot of it's on their landlords. It's not necessarily the businesses being bad, but of course, just something to keep in mind. But I mean,
that'll be something when I get into the settlement process where we'll say like, okay, we'll look to see what we can do, and then it's like, okay, it's already in a designated place. The landlord has worked out.
Perfect. Thank you,
Barney. Or sorry,
getting back to the trash thing, because it is going to be a significant issue there. There really is no location behind behind Pops for anything other than toters. So it historically has been, I think it's also not just Pops, also what Johnny's used to, when Johnny's was there. I'm not sure on Mintwood, but I know those two, there was very limited space for receptacles. And it was, that so when we do a settlement agreement, that has to be at the forefront. It really does. They're not asking for any entertainment endorsements, are they?
No, just the summer garden.
The summer garden.
It's the space directly out
the restaurant.
Huh?
It's the sidewalk space.
Sidewalk. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
To clarify, the summer garden refers to that the space is not on the public sidewalk. It's on their private space, and I'll clarify exactly if that's a kind of behind courtyard or on a roof or something.
Because it must be on the roof, because it's a tiny space inside. I don't recall any space out back. Now they did have seating for 8 or 10 out in front on on public space.
It isn't on public space, Barney. It's out front. It's on the sidewalk, but it's their privately owned space on the sidewalk.
Okay. Now that's all. I'm happy to see the guys that run Exiles go there all the time.
Excellent. We'd love to hear that.
I had a couple of other questions. So one's around timeline. When are they thinking that this will launch? And especially around that, are they going to be seeking a temporary license in the lead up to getting their their official license from ABC?
I'm assuming that. Let's look at what we have. First deadline being the beginning of December. I imagine they're aiming for at the after New Year's. Haven't had the opportunity to iron out that plan, but it's something that I can come back with before the full ANC.
Sure, that's great. Thank you. And then I imagine, just given the conversation so far, that y'all are open to negotiating a settlement agreement with the neighborhood, and that's fine.
Certainly. I imagine they've done so before.
Cool. That's great. I don't have any further questions. Does anyone else?
No, to me this is an easy one as long as they're the entertainment what they're not asking for an entertainment endorsement. I'm very happy to have these people come up. Now they do have trivia down at Exiles, and got what else they have. So we're sure there's no entertainment endorsement being asked for, right?
I'm looking at their application.
Okay.
And I see the date on it is February 14th. So that's the protest hearing date. So if you need the ANC to work on approving a temporary license until then, please just let us know.
Okay. I will get back in touch with them and let you guys know. Do you know when your next full body meeting will be?
Yeah, it's the first Wednesday in December. So that'll be
a hell of a wait.
December 6th, which is why I wanted to get you all up on this meeting. So apologize for the quick turnaround and come at 2 days notice to get on here. So thank you very much for doing that so quickly. But I just wanted to make sure that we could get you up in the December meeting in case we do need to do a stipulated license quickly. So
right. Okay. I'll confirm timeline and I'll be back in touch with you by email tomorrow or later this week.
Awesome. That's great. Cameron, thank you so much. Did anyone else any other questions from the commissioners or any questions from the community at large?
I move that we support this and move it to our December meeting.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Cameron, appreciate it. Thank you again for turning this around on very quick notice.
All right. Thank you. Have a great night.
Yep. You as well. All right, great. Let's go then back to the second item on the agenda, which were liquor license renewals for the Argonne Market and for Safeway. Both of these are renewals with no modifications or changes whatsoever. And both of them, my understanding at least, are operating well. I know that there are some issues with cars going in and out of the Safeway, double parking on on the street out in front of the Safeway. I don't think that's anything that's really Safeway's fault, and I think that'll be fixed as DDOT works on the Columbia Road project. but I open it up if anyone else has anything that they'd like to raise about either of these establishments, but they both seem like well-operated establishments that are treating the neighborhood well. And also, these are just regular renewals. Nothing. Head nods. All right. Cool. With that, I mean, I think it might be good just to list, just because we didn't give it a whole lot of notification for these. I'll send it around to the neighborhood. If we get any sort of response on it, then I think we could figure out, if there's some way forward on it. But right now, it seems like at least that we're good just leaving it here.
So are we going to vote to approve them, to recommend approval?
We don't actually need to do that for renewals.
Okay.
For renewals, as long as we don't act, then they go ahead. So for renewals, it's different than new licenses where we want to make some sort of affirmative action. But for renewals, as long as we don't do anything in the negative, they just go ahead and reapprove.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, fast, easy meeting, y'all. 31
Hey,
minutes.
I got a question while we're here.
Sure.
So Abra is going to be issuing a bunch of licenses, cannabis licenses, I think in March, or maybe the deadline is March. Do we know if they're going to send those applicants to us for review as they're required to do with ABC licenses?
That's a great question. I don't know. I assume that they're going to because they placard liquor, but it seems strange that they would not placard or they wouldn't have a similar situation or setup for placarding these marijuana licenses. So, but I'm not sure. I can reach out and let you know what I hear back.
Could you? I mean, I just, we're inundated now, and I look forward to the day where there's, one instead of 18.
I feel like I've seen something somewhere that says that that'll happen, but it's good to confirm. I'm also like curious if app is like staffing to have essentially, the person that deals with ANCs and community outreach that will be like if they'll separate between alcohol and cannabis. And like recently there was a meeting, an informal meeting on Zoom between like half of the chairs of commissions in the city, basically trying to discuss how we can support one another. And a couple of people, at least one, said that they're hoping for more direction regarding specifically that. So it's not something that is clear across the board. So hopefully there'll be more information coming across. And as soon as I hear anything from anyone, I'll definitely let you guys know, just because
Thank you.
make our jobs easier. But to date, I'm not sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. All right. Well, it is 7:33 p.m. and I call this meeting to a close.
Okay, Peter and Jake, I'm gonna have to get signatures from you tomorrow. Okay, so
Cool.
Hopefully y'all are around.
I will be.
Just text me, we'll figure it out. I'll be at work.
Thank you.
I'll make it work. Good night.
My job to get signatures for everything.
You can do it electronically too.
Well, yeah, yes.
And if you want, if it's preferable for you to print it, we can sign it electronically, and then you print off our signatures. He told me that.
It's not that big of a deal because I can stop by Jake's and stop by yours.
That's all good. I'll just say that because I'm can be at work part of the day, but we'll talk.
Okay.